All right, it's 5:30, so I'm going to call the meeting to order, and this is the regular City Council work session for Minnetrista, October 2nd, 2023. Present are myself, Lisa Whalen, the mayor, and then council members here this evening are Claudia Lacey and Peter Vickery and Ann McGregor, and then also we have our city engineer, Allison Fauski, with us, and welcome back, Allie Palfos, Director of Administration, Jasper Krugel, City Administrator, and Brian Grimm, our Finance Director. We have 3 items on our agenda for our work session. We have our sewer fund budget discussion, our storm surface water budget discussion, and our reconstruction project updates and considerations. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor and Council. So, yeah, we're just sort of chugging along with more enterprise fund budgets, just trying to get your direction and make sure everyone's on the same page as far as where we're going there. We will actually probably have an update on the water next time based on the third quarter billing. So I think we had talked about that a couple meetings ago or whatever, that we'll see. We'll have some updated information there based on that, the third quarter. Actually, people should either see it online or if their postcards they get or however they get their bill, they should see it early this week here. So, so as far as the sanitary sewer fund budget, I guess for the memo I tried to hit some of the highlight our information. So as far as the current cash balance, there's about 1.1 million in the fund, but there is some big expenses that you probably saw on the capital page. Gary, there's a lot of lift station panels over the next several years that are being adopted as well, or being improved or replaced, I guess, or whatever. Just per proper, they've lasted their 20, 25 years or whatever, and now they need to be, they're 80 to 100,000 at a pop or whatever. So, in addition to that, I think I referenced in the memo there, the Met Council monthly charge is up to about, or the annual charge is $404,000. It's about $35,000 a month or whatever, based on the allocation we get, from being part of their system or whatever, or flowing to their system. So that went up by about 3.5%, which actually, I don't know if I gave kudos to Gary in the memo or not, but I think we've done a good job of some of the I&I stuff, where I think the total budget went up for the Met Council, their budget like 6%, but our portion per the formula is about 3.5%, I think, because our flows have gotten better. I think Gary could probably, if he was here, explain it better than I could. But
we get a credit or something because of the I&I, I think.
Yep. So I think that's actually, otherwise that $404,000 that they're charging us would have been, at least somewhat higher. So as far as that, so just looking at running the draft budget and stuff, I guess from staff's perspective, we'd recommend going from the current rate is $109 a quarter. I guess the $115 a quarter for residential would be the recommendation, and then to also use that same about 5.5% increase for the commercial properties that we have. One thing that I don't know if we want to talk about that now is whether how to handle we have Mock-N-Thunes and the apartment complex coming in. I think Mock-N-Thunes is pretty straightforward. That sewer would be a commercial property and would be based on usage. But the apartment complex we do have in our 2023 fee schedule, and I think it dates back to the trailer court. It says apartment / trailer court, and it's at basically a 0.8 rate of a residential unit. I suppose figuring that, I don't know if it was based on how the trailer courts, were they just smaller or less usage, or it predates, it goes back quite a ways or whatever. And I know as staff, we even just talked about a little bit, would it make sense for the apartments to be, are they more commercial?
We talked about them for the water fund, remember? How are we treating them for the water?
So for I guess
So it's a single for Mock-N-Thunes, it's a single meter.
But that's
commercial.
Yeah.
Yep, and the apartment is a single meter commercial.
So
did we decide on the commercial? I don't know if we've gotten that far.
Oh, for the water?
For the apartments, I guess maybe that's just a delineation we need to make as a group. Is like, should the And the apartments
Yeah,
will come
maybe.
in on, line, late next year, I think is the plan or whatever, I believe so,
Yeah.
about a year from now. So,
Well, we should talk about that, and then maybe the sewer discussion for the apartment would take place at that time? Does that make sense?
that's fine, yeah, because maybe that could just be part of the work session on the 16th, the water update. Maybe we'll have a little more
Okay.
research and information on that. But I know as I was getting into this, I was like, I could make it, I don't know, I could see it both ways almost, and as far as how to handle
One
it.
of the things that I was thinking of is, rather than raising the rate, the 5.5%, and then the sewer connection and area charge the same, why not raise the sewer and area charges more and raise the rate less?
There we go. Like,
And I was
That's
thinking-
possible, yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, as far
Because,
as,
so the reason we have the area charge and the connection fees are to help pay for infrastructure that's already there and possibly future infrastructure or debt on infrastructure. So what I'm thinking is they should pay a little more because the infrastructure is already there. Other people have already been paying into it. So that's kind of what
yeah,
I'm.
and that's probably not a bad rationale either, because I know, and partially it's, I don't know, I mean, we've left it lower over the years, and maybe the water connection charge is pretty much double or more than double the
Right.
sewer connection charge. So I think it would be reasonable to
To raise-
raise
and
that,
when I
versus
saw
from
that-
1,400 to 1,500, maybe we could go, I don't know, 1,600 or 1,700 or
Can you
I don't-
even go 2,000? What is our water connection charge? 31?
Oh no, I think right now I think it's 3,300, and I think it's proposed to go to 3,500.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why would sewer charges be less?
Well, I think a lot of it's just there's been a lot less.
Infrastructure?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And,
So,
and now it's starting to catch. I mean, there's more sewer infrastructure, as you saw probably in that
Right.
schedule, that's needing to, because things that were put in probably by the developer a lot of times 20, 25 years or whatever,
whatever.
and
Yeah.
now is needing to be updated by city.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought part of why you put the 5.5% instead of 3.5% was because of having more labor in that area, which would be an ongoing cost.
Yeah, there is that position that we're adding in the utilities.
So
Yep,
that we
so-
couldn't count on connection fees to cover that.
that's interesting thinking. That's good thinking too.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. How much would it take to? I guess a lot of information is missing. So basically, how many connections are you expecting to have? And if you raise them, how much would you have to raise them in order to get the 115 down to 114?
Oh, it's a dollar.
Not that much. I
Yeah.
was thinking if it's 109 right now,
Yeah.
and you went to the 3.5%, what Peter's kind of
112.
to 112 or something like that, but then raise the connection fees higher in
Yeah, because
area.
then
Try to
no
make up the
connections to
difference.
balance that
Yeah,
out.
Right,
well, that's
right.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you wanted to cut it by $3, so it would be 4 quarters. Is 12, and then we have about 2,500 people sewer connections or so. So you'd be looking at $30,000. So you need to make up the difference, and say we have 100 new connections or 75 next year or something. You'd want to. Just trying to do the math quick or whatever.
It'd be it'd be about a $3,000 per unit connection charge, but that wouldn't cover area charges. So it'd be
Yeah.
about a $3,000 connection charge.
Yes, we'd really have to ramp that up.
So it'd be double.
Yeah, correct.
That's a lot.
But the other thought was, most of the time when people are building or buying a house, if that is included in there, it's not a big deal. Whether you buy a house for $503,000 or $500,000, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
If
I do.
those costs are built in there already, it's not as big of a deal as having to pay higher water and or sewer charges on a quarterly basis.
Yes, I would
Correct,
agree.
yeah. I think, so I'm looking at Jasper's computer now, but I think if we're doing it right, so if we want to raise another 30,000 through the sewer connection charge, we'd probably just need to up our sewer connection by about $400. So instead, so maybe you would need to go to 1,800 or 1,900 or something
Okay.
like that.
Okay.
So would you maybe like to explore that,
Yeah.
and go halfway on the rate adjustment, or
Yeah.
so?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
is that?
I think,
Okay, yeah.
and I
And we
think
can run it more
Peter made a
exact
good
numbers,
point. I
but-
think your point is correct. So when people say, how come my rate went up? So there's a number of things. And we can say, well, we now have to have a full-time sewer person. And we now also, the increase to our Met Council is higher. And yes, we are doing some capital improvements. But I think that capital improvements, it would be nice if we can say, in a lot of the connection and area charges are covered, the capital improvements are covered by that.
Sure. And that would be the
But we are
rationale to
going-
go higher on the
Right.
connection fee and the
Right.
area charge, whatever,
Yeah.
that we have these capital things scheduled
Right.
and knowing for 24 and beyond or whatever. So, yeah, I think that's reasonable, I guess, way to sort of.
And when we look at the water, when you come back, let's look at that as well.
Okay.
Let's see if there's some slightly different
Different way.
formula of doing that.
And I think maybe just to give a sneak preview, we might be able to just, based on the revenue for third quarter, from a quick
Okay.
glance, we might be able to, we did the 6%
Right.
for this year, the 8 maybe can come down to
Okay.
6.
Oh, now we're talking.
Don't hold me to it yet, but I
Yeah.
think it's a decent
That's
possibility.
very
But then
positive.
also, then Brian, when you look at
Very
that, also
happy.
then factor in, what if we raise the connection and area charges a little bit more, and maybe that rate can come down a bit? Because it's a hard, how do you say, it's hard to say, every year we've got these 5% and 6% and 8% increases to our water. I mean, we know we have to do it
Yeah.
because of that, but I think it would be easier if we can raise the area charges and connection fees,
Yeah.
and then the rates are adjusted a little bit
Yeah.
less.
The only thing I still would say is probably, on the water charts, and we can look at that more next time, is we know it's going to have to spike at least a little bit. So,
Right.
staying at least maybe coming from 8 down to 6, but knowing that, there's some year coming up here that's probably going to have to be 10, 12, 15, unless our...
Quiet, we don't hear that. No.
But just based, when the water treatment plants come online, that's, the
Right.
treatment plant, that's a $10 million, even when you bond for it, it's still
Right.
adding, $200,000-300,000 a year in debt
Right.
easily.
The only thing is,
300,000-400,000.
we don't know yet, we don't have all of the numbers together. So that's my little bit, how do you say, apprehensive about keep raising these rates this much, because what if we do get bonding money? We may not, but
Sure.
what if we do? Then that would reduce it. And then the other thing is, what if the project, originally they were saying 18 million. Well, now we're looking at more like 12 million or 13. So that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
So I want to be, yes, I think we have to keep that in mind. We're going to probably have to raise it, maybe a
Something.
big chunk
Right,
at one point. But I hate to raise it and then go, oh, well, we don't have to raise it that much.
No, but yeah, and I think we're going to need all the cash we can get in the water fund. I guess
Right,
for
yeah,
lack of
yeah.
a better way to put it, just because we know we've got some things that are imminent in
Yeah.
the next few years that if we end up all of a sudden, oh gosh, we got $1.5 million in cash. I know Todd from Mellors always comes in and says cash is king, because at some point you're going to have to borrow money and stuff, and
Right.
it's nice to have some of that cash on hand to do some of these smaller projects so you can bond for the bigger ones versus spending down too much.
Right.
And then, so there's
Yeah.
some of that type of, and then I still wonder, if that rain we just got recently would have came in July. It's still one of these years. If we get a wet summer, our revenue
Our
could
revenues
drop
are
by
going to
20-30%.
drop. Yeah, right.
So just some different variables that obviously none of us can control. The weather or whatever. So
And just, let's not forget about the apartment buildings and,
Right.
the
Yeah.
sewer and the water, because I don't want them to, or not to pay their share. And,
Right.
It seems like we'll have more of that in the future, so.
Yeah.
I think we need to make sure we're clear on that.
So when we have that discussion, do we discuss the sewer and water for apartments?
I think so.
Together?
Yeah, because I think
Okay.
those are things we want. Would be good to get clarification and get clear out there
And
that
we
how we
want-
want to treat those for 2024. And
I was going
beyond.
to say, we would want that before January, so.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Because it'd be nice to do it even as part of our fee schedule
Yeah.
process, and we've looked at it
Yeah.
versus reacting when they're coming online and be
Mhm.
like, well, now we should figure this out or whatever. So,
Okay.
or that's looking too much like we're just looking at an individual entity or whatever.
I just have one question. Any other questions?
Yeah.
So on page 5,
Sure.
under interest on investments, so for 23, we have $1,000. In 22, we had $2,000. In 21, we had nothing. And now we have $20,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, because I'm thinking what's going to happen is the 2022 So we had that negative market value adjustments when the market, basically everything's valued at, it's valued at market, but basically matures at par, so when the market basically, rates went, up finally and some things. So some things are basically just adjusting backward. I think the 20,000 should be a good number for 2024. It should be more normal. If we looked back at
But we
history.
don't realize that gain until we cash out. Is that?
Well,
Or do
there's
we
two
get-
different buckets. So there's
Okay.
money that we coming in based on our yield we're getting, or whatever,
Okay.
whether it's 3, 4, 5% is more common we can get now versus
Okay.
0, 1, 2. But then there's also the, say we have a $250,000 CD when things were basically if it can be sold in the secondary market at less because of the rates, the yield's a lot higher or
Okay.
lower than some of that and that's where some of that hit. All of a sudden, as rates skyrocketed, we had some investments that were at 1-2%. Those 250,000 on paper were at 240,
Okay.
and then now
All
they'll
right.
bounce back as they get closer to maturity. Is that
Okay.
maybe
Okay.
fair?
Yeah, I just looked at that and I thought, well,
Yeah, 2022 was a horrible year I think it was like the worst ever. I think I was at a seminar and they said it was like for the bond market, it's been one of the.
True.
Does that sound about right,
Yeah,
Peter?
yeah, very true.
yeah.
We've had this
So, yeah.
discussion many times.
So I think 2020, because basically we've had so little in interest in market value because things have been low rates
Right.
and low yield but it's bouncing back or whatever. So
Yeah. All right. Anything else? So you'll come back then with that.
yeah, we'll look at that split
Kind
of
of
putting more to
adjustment,
the
yeah.
area charge
Okay.
and connection charge and do maybe the 112 and the 3%, for the
Okay.
for the utility rate per quarter for residential and.
All right.
And then, is that would the 3% be for the commercial rate probably too, or like that, or would you want the commercial rate to be a little higher?
Probably a little higher,
Maybe-
I think.
Maybe 4,
5.5.
Maybe keep the commercial at
Yeah.
the 5.5%
Yeah.
as presented,
Yeah,
and
I think so. Yeah.
have the residential come down a bit.
Yeah.
Or, okay. All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, yeah, I think we're projected hopefully at year end to be around that $1 million in cash, in which with some of those improvements we got coming up and some things, it's not bad, and some of our annual budget of operation expenses in that fund, it's not. I think it's a decent place to be. We sort of have about a year's worth of our operating expenditures in the fund, plus knowing there's capital on top of it expenditures. So.
And the other nice thing with the sewer fund is we have more people on the sewer than we do water.
Yep, the sewer's a little over
Yeah.
2,500, and the
Yeah.
water's about the
Right.
2,000-ish or so. So a little. Okay.
Okay.
All right. The next one should be, I assume, pretty
Real
easy.
easy.
I don't want to make assumptions, but anytime the staff's presenting a 0% change, I would think, so, yeah, as far as the surface stormwater fund, we basically have, about a $688,000 current fund balance there. So, looking at that, we've got, some of the things that Gary's identified to do on the schedule for 2024 and beyond. But I think we're fine keeping the rate as for now and just keeping an eye on it. This year's stormwater improvements we pretty much bonded for as part of the whole,
Yeah.
So that's just was incorporated that and incorporated into the the payback schedules there. Because there was like $500,000 worth of stormwater improvements. It was too big to just pay directly out of this
Out of the
fund.
cash,
Yeah, so we
right.
needed to bond. for that.
The other thing we talked about once is, so special assessments, it also includes assessments on stormwater, but when the assessments are paid, money comes back, we put all of it into our street fund. So do we need to put some of it back into our stormwater fund?
I would say if we changed our philosophy, so like when we bonded on this year's
Right.
projects, we basically been putting all the assessments into the street. I think
Right.
this came up in the past, but basically because everyone's on, has stormwater fees, so I think we're just accounting for the principal and interest payments going forward. Just
Going to the roads.
just pretty much, yeah. So
Okay.
it's all the activities sort of out of that bond fund or whatever, whether it's the tax levy, the principal and interest payments. So I know whether it's came up before, it should be transfer a little, that money into the stormwater. But I think seeing we're on these bonded projects, accounting for everything in the project funds, the roads funds, I think we're fine not sending money back to the storm because we're really not charging the stormwater on these bonded projects, we're not hitting the actual operations fund. We're just taking it out of the capital projects fund that we set up for the 2023 projects.
Okay,
That makes sense.
when we're bonding for it, but
Yeah,
and we've been bonding for all of the 429s.
Well, I guess we've had a couple smaller ones, so that would
Right.
from 21 and 22. So I suppose
Right.
whether, and I'd have to look back at how large the
I'm
stormwater
just
share was
wondering-
out of those projects. I guess.
I'm just wondering, legally, if we have to put the money back into this, if it's for a stormwater project and we assess for it, does it have to go back into the stormwater fund? So just check on
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
We
sure.
don't,
Okay,
we
yeah,
don't
yeah.
have to have an answer tonight.
Sure.
I just think.
And I think it wouldn't be
I wanna
too
make-
material a dollar amount, but it could
Okay.
be,
It might be minor.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that legally the accounting is being done
That's right.
correctly. Just
And I think
it
I've
might
asked them
be-
before. I think
and it's only if it's the 429. So
Yep.
if the project is done with a 429 assessment and we bond for it, then I think you're right. It's all bonded together. Then it all goes back
Yep.
into that account. But if we don't bond for it and we're taking it out of a road fund and we're taking it out of the stormwater fund, when those assessments come in, do they then have to be put into those different funds?
Yep. And I
Does
think-
that
That's a good question.
make sense? Or?
What is a 429?
It's so when we do a road project and we bond for it, and then we assess for it. It's the assessment. So when you assess for a project, it's a 429 project, and then you have to follow the certain procedures in order to do the assessment.
Oh, okay.
So I'm sorry.
No,
It's
no,
the
that's
statute.
Yeah.
The state statute.
So,
And then another question, is that where say if we're doing anything for like the Pioneers or watershed, isn't that where money comes from?
from the stormwater, we
Yeah.
would take that out of the
So your
stormwater fund.
question about putting money back, what happens if we need that money for,
Right.
say, a watershed district?
Well, right now, we have plenty of money in there for that, because I think that project, our portion for this year was 7,500, and then next year it was 7,500, right?
Okay.
So I think, so we have plenty of money in here. Now, the other place that we can actually take the money from, and you can check on this, we could actually take the money out of our environmental fund as well.
No?
Because we call it the tree fund, but it's actually called the environmental fund. And so,
Okay.
and then there's specific things that we can use it for. And so the treatment of whale tail would qualify. We could use that, though, we could use the environmental fund to pay for that if
Yeah,
we
I think we
wanted
have a
to.
couple options.
So we would have a couple options there.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So, but, so I don't know if that's a council decision or if we want to, how we want to pay, where we want to pay for it.
Yeah, and I think it could go either way probably. As far as I know, we've mainly used that fund for
Trees,
trees, but
I know.
yeah,
But
and
it
then-
isn't, yeah, it is an environmental fund,
Okay.
so. Okay,
So
so we have plenty of in there for that project.
yeah,
Well, I noticed too that you had in 2024, you had a 17,500 expense for consulting services on stormwater, and then the other years are 7,500. Is there something coming up that we're probably going to need more money for? Or?
and I know, yeah, and Gary would probably be able to answer this more.
What year
detailed, but
was-
I
I'm
think
sorry.
it was, or it's on page 11
Yeah.
there. But I think Gary had plugged in the MPDES MS4.
Oh, it
Yeah,
could
the
be.
17.5. And I know this year it ended up being larger because I think we had some additional things to go through with them, Allison, right? Or wasn't there like I don't know,
Audit.
the audit that went a little. So maybe I told Jasper it might have been like Gary had recency bias and he remembered having to pay more money and go through more hoops this year or something, that maybe he plugged in a little more for 24 and then thought it would back up for 25 or something. But yeah,
question.
we can double check with him
I was just
on
curious.
that. But no, that's good. I know, yeah, it was a little on the more intensive side this year, just based on some of the back and forth with the state.
We don't have to do anything with our watershed plan, do we? In 24?
Not to my knowledge. no.
Okay, and then it would be MS4 or MPDS.
I think he was likely using this year's numbers and kind of extrapolating it to the next year.
Okay.
But hopefully we.
But I think 23 was hopefully more of an anomaly. I think
Yeah.
as far
It
as
certainly
just-
was.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say I know Allison and Gary got to work with them on, or I heard about it a little bit, I guess. Right.
And then we don't have any wellhead protection plans coming up or anything like that? I don't think so.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I don't think that's coming up for renewal.
Yeah, I can't
Updated.
remember when we did it. It doesn't seem like it's up for renewal
Yeah, I
soon,
don't
so,
think so either,
okay.
So yeah, so I think there should be. And I know Gary's got a couple capital items in the schedule. In 24 and 26, some equipment type items, vac trailer and skid loader and stuff. But otherwise, I think it's sort of calmed down as far as the watershed districts. I don't even want to bring up almost like the phosphorus stuff and all that. Some of that stuff that can get really spendy or whatever. I don't think has been pushed too hard lately. So I think that would be. We'll take a wait and see approach on some. I think it's more from my perspective or whatever. So.
Okay.
But.
I think we're okay with the 0% increase.
Yeah, that's easy.
But yeah,
All
figured
right.
at least this one is a good one because I know once the recycling fund will have to come, and I know the waste management contract we've got the 5-year one, and then so I guess what I'm trying to say is I think we've shown council that there needs to be an increase there each year the recycling. So I think that'll be that's a preview again, I guess, a sneak peek that
Next.
that probably will
Next
have
one.
an increase. So that
He's just preparing us.
yeah right.
All right.
So, okay. Yeah, it sounds good there. So. All right.
So I think we're good.
Otherwise,
So Gary, you're next. Allison.
I'll step in. I spoke to Gary earlier today, and I think it's best that he's not here.
Yeah.
The poor man sounded very
Poor
sick. So in the reconstruction area, the curb is in. The curb across the driveways, only half was poured at a time so that residents could have access to their driveway. So the curb crew will be coming back to pour the other half of those curbs. So what the contractor will be out, to ramp, because right now that curb really sits up from the roadway, not only the roadway but also their driveway. So they'll put some material down to kind of ramp up over the curb, so they can come up over the curb and then come back down into their driveway, while the other half of their driveway, while the curb across the other half of their driveway is poured. So we'll see that activity taking place, and then they go and place material behind the curb, black dirt behind the curb, get the dog fences and irrigation systems. So that's the next step coming through here. But we just, discussions with Gary and the contractor over the past few weeks, we've been keeping our eye on restoration, particularly with the extreme drought that we've experienced this year. So the contract calls for sod to be placed for restoration. Now, what I'm hearing through other contractors is that sod availability is a bit of a challenge because the sod farms are experiencing the drought. So there's a supply concern to some extent, depending on the contractor and what sod farm they're pulling from. And then there's also, what quality of sod is coming off there because we haven't had a lot of rain. So we don't know. I don't have an answer for you right now as far as, do we anticipate there will be a sod issue? But we did want to talk to the council, knowing that there's, through the summer there's been this issue. We might want to pivot and look at restoration with seed. And we do have a contract quantity for that. So that means that, we can, instead of using our sod quantity, we'll just put seed and mulch down there. And what we've talked
Would
about-
you hydro seed or not?
Well, we would. So that's a good question. So we've talked about that as well. And I actually reached out to Eric Watkins, who spoke to the residents last year about the watering practices, about the timing of, do we do like a hydro seed or do we do a dormant seed? And he said usually you dormant seed, it's weather dependent, so early to mid-November. So we're very much weather dependent right now as far as, what route should we look at going down. The ultimate goal is to make this restoration look good, right? That's what we want for the residents. We want to come in there, have a contractor go in there, do it once and hit, will there be areas that need to be addressed in the spring? Of course, it's every project that happens, but we want to go in with what we think is best given the weather conditions and the availability of material. So just wanted to bring that to council for, if there's any concerns. Like I said, we don't know right now if that's the direction we want to go. But if that sod's, if the availability is an issue, if the quality of the sod is an issue, we want to look at putting seed down instead. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about that, but we've been talking about it staff level and with a contractor, but wanted to bring it to a work session just to see if there was any concerns with making that pivot, any questions that I could answer.
Who is responsible for watering?
It's a good question. So per the contract, the contractor is responsible for the first 30 days.
And do they water every single day?
The specification, I'm going off memory here, but typically what we require is that it gets a certain amount of water placed on the sod per week, whether that's through rain or whether that's through the contractor watering.
Yeah, but the problem, sod takes more water than seed. And if you don't water that sod every single day, it's, especially if it's not good quality, it's not gonna make it.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Seed, yes, that also needs to be watered almost every day. But so my question is, do the residents water at all, or?
So typically, when we put the sod down in a typical project, the contractor's responsible for watering for that 30 days. Now,
Okay.
if residents choose to supplement that because they choose to, that's their choice. So after that 30-day window, the sod is inspected, and anything that isn't taken root or is dead is marked for removal and replacement, and that 30-day window starts again for that sod replacement. So that's the challenge that if I put myself in a homeowner's shoes, we've lived through a construction project all summer. We had Center Point in there for a month before the city project started. And, oh, great, sod, that looks great. And then 30 days, sod isn't surviving, and we start again.
But would they start again now, or would they start again in the spring?
At this point, they would start again in the spring.
Yeah, because then I don't know that it matters.
Well, we certainly want to take a look at getting something established,
Right.
something that starts to take root yet this fall
Right.
here. As long as we shouldn't be up against a cold weather window for sod, but that's just kind of what we're having these discussions. It's a lot of what ifs, and there's a few variables in there. Just like I said, we want to make sure that the route we go for restoration is in the best interest of the residents and getting that area stabilized, either whether
Right.
it's seed or sod.
Do they know that if it doesn't take, we will be back in the spring and redo it? I mean, they're aware of that?
Yes, in fact, so I have a template, and we have communications that go out every week right now via email to residents, and we would convey that message to residents, once the sod's placed, what the contractor's responsibility is. But I have also gathered some good information that we can pass along to residents as far as don't fertilize, don't mow, don't walk on it. Things to help get that
Right.
sod or seed, especially for sod, because people sometimes see sod and
And think it's, right.
you can
Yeah.
go and walk on it or whatever, and you're best to stay away from it for a while.
So what are you asking the council? Do we have a preference?
I'm asking if council is adamant about sodding. If in the event that we have to seed, would that be an issue with the council?
Can we ask them to water every day? I mean, you have to do that with sod.
I'd have to again. I have to take a look at the specification, and I can certainly do that. My recollection is that it's a certain amount of water placed on it per week. I don't know that it goes into the detail as to how frequent the watering occurs. Now, in high temperatures, yes, certainly they're out there more often because it's in the contractor's best interest to water at a frequency and at a rate that would get that.
So,
that sod to
just so
grow.
the council knows, this has not happened before, but it did happen over in Jennings Cove in their neighborhood. One lady was very upset because of the sod, because it didn't match her existing grass.
Oh, no, that does not surprise me. I've got two neighbors that would feel exactly the same.
And so, and then,
No surprise.
so it I don't know who was involved in that. Okay, so then finally the staff went out and Gary, I think, and his crew went out and removed the sod and put down the type of grass that she wanted. I mean, it was yeah. So my question is, would seed blend in better with existing grass versus sod?
It's a good question. I don't have the spec in front of me to look at the seed mix versus the sod.
I'm assuming
I believe
there's
they're
some-
similar mixes
Okay.
of Kentucky bluegrass and fescues and what have you.
Okay.
So it sounds like the contractor is responsible then if it doesn't take, is that, so?
That's correct. Yep. For 30 days. So it's just a matter of taking a look at it. Like, I mean, we could say, contractor, you need to sod. It's just if there's a supply issue where they can't
Yeah.
get sod, and if it's a quality of sod issue, do we really want that for our residents? And is it's a supply chain concern that could be out of the contractor's control. It's a tough situation.
How is a lot? It's not that much.
It's quite a bit of sod.
It's a lot of
Yeah.
sod.
Yeah,
it's a lot of
it's
sod.
every yard. Depending on the yard, it might only be a couple feet, or it might be 10 feet or more.
How many homes?
80 something, 82 properties. I'm just off the top of my head.
81, yeah. 81, 82.
So it's a large quantity of sod, and so that's why until we're up at that time when we're ready to get that restoration going, it's at that point that we'll know. Is
So
that quantity
you
of
also
sod
have to
available.
make sure that they get the 6 inches of good
Yeah.
dirt.
And restorations, it's funny, right? Like you place the 6 inches of topsoil down, but you don't want to compact it too much, otherwise it can't take root. But you got to get it compacted enough that it's not going to settle too much. It's more nuanced than one would think.
You can't give the neighbors their choice, can you? Or is that too overwhelming?
I think we're best off going either all
One or
seed
the
or
One
all
or the
sod.
other. Okay.
Are you the one managing the contractor? Like, who's talking to them about?
I'm part of the group, so it's myself and Gary and the inspector for the project.
So you guys, my opinion is you have to make the decision. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. And if it doesn't take, then it's going to be done next spring again anyway.
Yeah.
But I hate to spend a whole lot of money on poor quality sod. That's
Yeah,
the thing.
and there's definitely a difference in grass because we had a situation on the street that I lived in and they put in very poor, everyone has the really soft Kentucky blue and they put in this like Augusta, weed grass and we were like, no, pull that up.
I will not disagree with you in any way.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you like to lay and roll around the grass. Very big difference.
So now you let Claudia does that. But I'm fine with a nice seed mix. But I do know that we had, again, this one lady was very adamant that it didn't match her. I don't know what they put
Good
down.
question.
And those situations come up, and we're certainly willing to work, within reason with residents to meet their concerns, to address their concerns. The goal was to have a conversation with council so that if we do end up making, if it is in the best interest to start looking at seed, that the council isn't taken by surprise and go, well, wait a second, We
Yeah.
always do sod. Why are we doing seed? That we have these conversations ahead of time so we're not
Right.
up against a time clock to make a decision.
Yeah, that's-
And I haven't solicited any
Yeah.
feedback
Right.
from the council.
What would you want in your yard? I mean, I would want sod down. I wouldn't want seed if they ripped up my lawn and my road, and I would want I would want sod. I know what you're saying. If it's not available, it's not available. But
Okay. I have a full driveway length of garden, so it doesn't matter to me. Okay?
I live in the
It was
woods.
getting involved.
and I think
But I
I
have
think
neighbors who
these,
it matters to, and I mean,
Yeah,
it matters.
it matters.
Down to the.
Yeah.
And these
nth time.
neighbors, I think they have the impression that this is way behind.
I would agree. that
They
there
are not
residents
happy.
that-
And I think if we're like, no, we're going to throw some seed down and we hope it looks good in a few months, I think this looks to be completed is I think we need to not use seed if at all possible. Because, I mean, I'm hearing regularly, this is so far behind.
Who says that?
Oh,
No, I mean, serious, because I'm not hearing that. And I would say,
I'm happy to go back and.
yeah, that would be.
I really will.
Because
really
I would
do.
be happy to talk to them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know, we've got-
factually, isn't the
There was a,
I mean, I would.
So,
I won't talk to one individual, but I will talk to the others.
okay, thank you.
And I
And
think
that's not who it was. It was a woman. Not that woman either. But
so. There are a couple things with regards to project schedule. So one is CenterPoint Energy was in there in June, and so
Yeah.
the contractor was not able to excavate to get the water main replaced until July. So that's a month delay. And so for residents, and rightfully so, in their mind, construction started in June.
Right.
And so I appreciate that. It did start in June. It wasn't the city's contract. So that was a 4-week delay, maybe a little more, I'm not sure, right from the get-go. The other thing is that we pivoted because of the site constraints in there and to keep the project moving along. Originally, we looked at phasing so that we would have, after the utility work was complete in the first phase, that they would come in and put the curb and gutter and pave in there. And that's been that we pivoted from that because in order to do that and keep going with the water main excavation, people would have had to park a significant distance away and walk in.
Yeah.
And so when, again, we're looking at the, I understand, I completely understand the expectation for paving of the road, but to offset that with the major inconvenience of parking so far away in order, because it's so narrow in there, as you all know. So that's, I think, another
And some people
frustration.
probably couldn't park,
Correct.
because they wouldn't be able to carry groceries or, because
Mobility.
of maybe some physical, restraints. So I think to Claudia's point, sod if possible,
Okay.
if at all possible, good quality sod if possible. And if that's not possible, then we'll have to look at seed, but then we'll have to look at seed, I guess. And we won't be surprised, but Claudia, I think we're going to have to let them make that call, right?
Sure.
I mean, yeah.
And I'll certainly continue with the updates at
Yeah.
council meetings so
Yeah.
that you're aware of where we're at in the process.
The only other thing I would say is we're not the only community that's behind schedule because of CenterPoint, because of utilities. So Shorewood is behind too, and they're getting a lot of grief as well because their projects are behind, and they don't even know if they're going to get their lift done, or their second lift done this year. So it's other communities have the same issue. We're all in the same boat.
Well, thank you for the feedback. And if there's any issues or questions that come up in the meantime, please drop me a line and happy to answer questions.
This is just a thought, and maybe not a good one. But, on these projects where it's this one, I don't know how many more projects we're going to have where it's a larger area. I wonder if you had like block captains or something where you could, like maybe if there had been 3 or 4, we'll call them block captains, that you could have met with on monthly basis so that you would have more contact and connection to the residents. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but, and then also this type of thing, this situation or decision could actually have been then their decision. You know what I'm saying? Versus ours. Because it doesn't matter to us. We want them to be happy, but whether it's sod or whether it's seed, as long as they're happy, but maybe, you know, so I'm just saying, just a thought for future projects. I mean, okay. Great. That's it?
That's it. Thank you.
Any other questions then? All right. With that, then, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Miss. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
All good.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Peter. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 4-0.